What is up, guys? This is JR Juggernaut 1, and I'm back, finally bringing you more videos. So this is one of two deck profiles I'm most likely going to do, that I'm most likely going to post on my channel. This is the deck that I'm, at this point, running for Nats, but I'm still looking for potential other choices. This is going to kind of be both a deck profile slash rant on the current format. Now, as you can see, I'm currently running Chaos Dragons. I'll be quite frank with you. I hate the fact that I'm running this deck. I like the deck, but the problem is I don't like running meta decks. I don't like conforming to the meta. When I run a deck, it's because I like the deck, it's good, but it's also different, and I like the surprise factor. I'm not going to say I'm not going to run a deck simply because it's meta, but there's I don't like to play the most popular deck. And with last year being the only exception, with last year's Nationals being the only exception, I don't ever really play the meta. The only reason I played Plants last year was because I was playing it so long, and it was just the best deck that I had. There wasn't any reason to play anything different, so I just stuck with it. Even through all the BS shenanigans that eventually made Plants a deck that I refused to play because it was just too freaking linear, and too, I guess, mainstream is the right word I'm looking for. Right now, we're kind of we're having a similar yet also quite different problem. If you remember last year, there were numerous decks you could run at Nationals that were meta and that were all pretty effective. For example, you had 6 Sams, Plants, Heroes, Frog Monarchs, Agents, I'm trying to think what else, but there was just a bunch of decks that were really, playable. Now, let's be honest, we don't really feel the same way. Right now, it feels like we have Dino Rabbit and Chaos Dragons really dominating, and then Injectors are just right behind. I know I'm not the only one who doesn't like this, because this is just a big problem for the format. We're currently in a situation where it just seems like the only way to do well is to play the meta. And I think part of that problem actually stems from the different types of decks that are in this meta. First, you have Injectors, a deck that brings out little monsters that just kind of equip stuff and pop your field. Next, you have Dino Rabbit, which is and I was going to say with Injectors, they can constantly set up so that they're just always able to just keep making plays. You have to have an out to their play and hope they don't draw into more Injector cards that can help them further herp derp you. Otherwise, you lose. Dino Rabbit is just a deck that straight up locks you down and just tries to prevent you from making any plays. It's a strong deck, and it's just big monsters can deal with it, but they can also keep your big monsters from getting on the board. This is probably the deck that's that's probably also the most defensive of all the decks. It can make big pushes, but it's also very powerful in keeping the cards off the board, because it has negation cards like Laggy and Dulka. It has a bunch of traps, and it also has cards like Forbidden Lance that also kind of serve that same purpose. Overall, it's annoyance. And then finally you have Chaos Dragons, which are just straight up aggro. The deck just keeps pushing and pushing and just eventually just destroys you. Now, obviously, these decks are pretty different in a sense. They're all pretty aggressive, but they also don't fall. You stop them in different ways. Dragons, you have to stop them by locking them down, by just stopping their monsters as they come out. Injectors, you have to be able to actually negate their effects, or just negate the summon of the monster. And with Dino Rabbit, it's just kind of a mix of both. It's the side deck hate also doesn't really help you much, because nothing really works on all 3 decks very effectively. The only card I can think of that does is Prohibition, and even then, well, not everyone's going to really play Prohibition. It's just a problem. It's just a problem right now that I'm seeing, where there isn't a deck that really deals with each deck, that really deals with these cards, equally effectively. I mean, in order to deal with Chaos Dragons, you have to be able to stop their big monsters. But if you're playing a deck full of big monsters, you'll probably fall prey to injectors as a result if you don't draw your negation cards, because you probably won't be running many traps. With with Rabbit, you have to be able to stop their plays very much as well, but you also need to be able to have plenty of outs to their Laggy and Dolka plays when they make those big pushes. And with injectors, you just have to be able to stop them constantly. But like I said, it's based on what you're hearing, it doesn't seem like there are decks that really counter that. Well, I might have found a deck that does, but Chaos Dragons to me is probably the best of the three. Just because of the fact that while it does have a problem with decks like Injectors due to its lack of back row, what I do think is good is just the fact that it can still OTK you and do a variety of different plays that are just freaking powerful. So through this rambling, I'm just trying to say it's possible to find a deck, but unless you can find a deck that consistently and a majority of the time beats all three of these decks, Nationals is going to be a real problem, it seems like. Now, granted, the one advantage of Nationals as opposed to previous events, there will be a greater diversity of decks due to the increased field. There is another issue that I will probably discuss in another vid, but simply put, I just want to say with Nationals, I think you just have to be wary of the fact that you will face a variety of different decks. Though ironically enough, when I went to Nationals last year, almost every match I played between the side events and the LCQs was plants. So take what you will from that. I don't think that's going to be the same thing, though, here. I think Chaos Dragons will be a very well-represented deck, but I also see a lot of people wanting to rage against the meta and also just going rogue for that same reason. Either way, we'll see. But this is my take on Chaos Dragons, and I'm just going to warn you now, it is very standard. That's one of the other things I don't like about this deck. However, I've pretty much told myself I would rather run the standard build that I think works than try to be different and run a build I don't think is as effective. So this is just my build. I'm not going to show you the side deck. I'm going to show you the extra, but that's about it. So let's see. We've got 3 Light Pulsar. It's standard. It's the heart of the deck. You have to run 3 copies. Enough said. Double Wyvern. I see why some people do like to run 3. Actually, no, I don't really see much reason for it, but 2 is obviously good. I do hate that sometimes I occasionally will run out of targets for this, depending on my draws, and if I go Future Fusion, I won't always go for both, because the thing that you have to be careful of is, if your opponent remembers that it's mandatory, and you tell them you don't have any more targets, you tell them you don't have any more targets, they can be like, well, can I check your deck to confirm? And you'll have to show them your deck, which nobody wants to do. Double Dark Flare. I do really like this card because this is one of my ways of kind of getting out the whole Red Eyes Metal Pulsar combo. I also do like this against a bunch of matchups because it just banishes key cards, in their graveyard. Not to mention it can help set up your graveyard for important plays, like it lets you it's another way to ditch your Wyvern from hand. I actually do use the Pulsar effect to ditch from hand fairly often, just because if I can ditch like Red Eyes, I run 2. If I can ditch this to the grave, that's just kind of an easier way of getting it there and just having a great setup. But yeah, I don't always like to draw this, but it's good. It's a very good card. Usually I just like to banish it with Wyvern, though, if I get the chance. Double Sorcerer. It's Sorcerer. Some people like to run 3 of this card, which I understand, but I just think 3 clogs. I'm trying to keep this to 40. If I was to make a 41st card, it probably wouldn't even be a 3rd version of this. 3rd copy, I mean. Triple Tour Guide. These are the same exact tour guides I ran at the regional. I'm going to eventually switch these out with a friend's tour guides. Like, 2 of my friends were willing to let me borrow their tour guides. One of them needs his back, and the other's going to let me use his for Nats if I end up playing this deck, which, like I said, it's not guaranteed right now. Triple Lila, I'll admit I considered at one point dropping this to 2 until I saw why until I kept testing it, and I was like, okay, pop their only back row, explode from there. That's exactly why you need 3 of this card. What I don't think you need 3 of, on the other hand, is Raikou. I'm only running 2 because 3 clogs. I end up siding out all 3 in mine against Injectors. Even against Dino Rabbit, I don't like 3, so ultimately I was just like, I'm going to find another card to put in its place. But I still wanted to run 6 Light Sworn, so I did find room for 6, and I will tell you what that is shortly. Next, one of my favorite cards in this deck, Double Card Trooper. Trooper's awesome. He's just, it's the same thing with like Light Sworn and Plant, you know, mill power, draw power, that's really effective. Just like in the Light Ray Sworn. Yep, Triple Valor. I can actually see myself dropping this to 2 simply for the fact that I wouldn't want 3 necessarily in my hand against Dragons and Rabbit, but if I find myself that if I do make sure my side deck has other forms of protection in it, then I'm just gonna want to keep 3 Valor in, because then it's like regardless of my matchup, I'll at least have some protection. I will at least have some protection against that matchup. You know, even Valor can still be useful against Rabbit and Chaos Dragon, so I can live with it. You know. And now for the 1-ofs. 1 Aaron, this is my 6 Lightsborn. I do like this, deals with, it's another out to cards like Reaper and Zenmanes. Just gets in there, and Lightsworn, so fodder for recharge if I really need it. I'll admit, like, there are certain matchups where I will side this out, but at the same time, most of the time it's just a favorable card to have. Lackluster Soldier. Nothing really to say. He's just broken. Sanguine. Because you run the tour guides, but also because he can be very key in searching. One thing I actually really like to do is go tour guide, get Sanguine. They destroy tour guide, and then the next turn I'll tribute Sanguine for one of my dragons, like Pulsar or Dark Flare. It's a really effective play just because you accomplish a lot. You're able to get it to the grave and you get a search. You'd give up your normal summon, but most of the time it's going to be worth it. Unless you really need to like banish, unless you have like a Wyvern engrave that you really want to banish. I don't see, that's it. Dark Armed, because it's Dark Armed, you don't really, it just really works in Dragons, enough said. And finally Gorse, because even though you play Future Fusion, that's not going to stop you from playing this. You need defense if you can, and Gorse is just amazing. So yeah, 29 monsters. I'll get to the spells quickly. Triple Recharge. Some people ask me, why do I play 3 and not 2? Simply put, I play 3 Recharge because I think it's one of the best cards in the deck. Because it's draw power, it lets you ditch your Light Sworns that can be dead at times, and it lets you mill. So it just kind of really helping the deck. It's just like in Light Ray Sworn, you really want to draw Recharge a lot because you just like the draw power and the fact that it just gets the deck going. Double Forbidden Lance. I really like this card. Not everybody feels the same way, but I love it just for... I like it more than MST simply because, the deck doesn't have like any way to protect the monsters, and there are some situations where you really where just for that one turn, you want to not have to worry about a certain card, but rather than just hope you MST it, you'll have Lance as a counter to it. I really like it. And then just the 1-ofs. Everything here is actually limited at 1, of course. Charge of Light Brigade, Heavy Storm, Future Fusion, Dark Hole, Reborn, and Allure of Darkness, which I actually am surprised people are starting to cut. I see the logic behind it, but at the same time, you kind of need more draw power in this deck because if you're stuck with a hand of just Chaos monsters and you have no way to get them out or no way to mill, you just want to just cycle through your deck. It's that simple. So yeah, that's the deck. Let me guys know what you think. I will eventually, like very soon, post another profile of the other deck I'm considering playing. It is actually a logical choice in this meta, and I will explain why in the video, but I don't have all the cards for it, so it'll probably be a Dueling Network profile. So stay tuned for that, and I'm out of here. Peace, guys.